All right, so before I let you go, I kind of want to have a little bit of fun. Now you're a Mets fan. I'm a Phillies fan. I've been a Phillies fan my whole life. I want to talk about for you growing up as a Mets fan. What, who are some of the Phillies that you hated the most? And then I'm going to talk about some of the Mets that I didn't like.
Yeah.
I'm 26, so I grew up in the early 2000s, mid 2000s of watching those Mets teams. I know those Mets teams are especially that '06 team, I know are near and dear to you.
Yeah.
Um, give me some Phillies that you just hated growing up. I want to know, or it doesn't even have to be growing up. It can be now. I don't know. Just give me some Phillies that you just don't like.
Um, well, I mean, like the rivalry between the Mets and the Phillies like didn't really like gain a lot of steam until like '05, '06, '07,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
Because when you think about after the Mets went to the World Series in 2000, between '01 and '04, they were terrible. So,
Right.
I mean, there really wasn't a whole like ton going on there. But like, anyone from the Phillies core like got under my skin. Like Jimmy Rollins, even though I had a
Yeah.
ton of appreciation for him as a fellow short baseball player.
Right.
Um, and the hate for Chase Utley didn't really skyrocket until the 2015 NLDS. So,
Right. Right.
but like the guy who like probably scared the crap out of me the most was Ryan Howard, just
Yeah.
because like I felt like he always killed the Mets because I mean most of them did, but like at any point in time, like I just was always worried about him cranking a huge homer just because he had power for days.
He
But I think the
did.
one I hated the most was probably Cole Hamels, and that's
Okay.
that's dissipated over time. Just
Yeah.
time heals all wounds. But when he called the Mets chokers and that yada yada yada, all that kind of stuff, it was extra sweet whenever they were able to get him when he was on the mound for sure.
Right. And like, I mean, remember, I see, I can understand Mets fans hating Jimmy Rollins. Remember '07 spring training. We're the team to beat in the NL East. I
Yeah.
mean, automatically people don't like you down in New York. And, in Philly, we're like, okay, he better live up to it. And he did. And he had an MVP season. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Although, I mean, I feel like David Wright should have won the MVP that year, but that's
yeah,
probably a conversation for another day.
advanced statistics say, but we're not going to talk about
Yeah,
that.
but I mean, the collapse definitely screwed him over for sure, even though he was the only one keeping them afloat. But I
Yeah.
digress.
Yeah. For me though, like, man, like I said, I'm 26. So I grew up in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. And like you said, that rivalry didn't really heat up until like, '06, '07, '08. But man, what's crazy for me? Like, I don't think I hate specifically any Met. I didn't like you said for the core of the Phillies. Like for me, it was like even though he was a good player throughout his career, like Luis Castillo, I couldn't stand Luis Castillo. Jose
Music and Mets fan.
Reyes, remember the ESPN commercial where he's dancing with Carl Ravitch? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I wasn't the biggest fan of Jose Reyes. I know you love David Wright, but oh my God, he was a great player, but couldn't stand David Wright. Carlos
But why?
Delgado.
Is it purely because of his what he did on the field?
No, it's his personality. I just didn't like the way he carried himself, even though he's probably a
David Wright?
super nice guy. Huh?
My God. Okay. Next.
Yeah,
Next. We're not gonna get that guy.
next. No, we're going through the list. And you know what's crazy? And he was probably one of the nastiest closers I ever saw. Billy Wagner. I could not stand Billy Wagner. I think was it
I
him
could
and
see
Pat
that.
Burrell had that whole thing going.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. And like he was a Philly. Billy Wagner was a Philly, but
Mhm.
I couldn't stand Billy Wagner during that rivalry. No,
Yeah.
couldn't
I
do
could see that. Yeah.
couldn't do Billy
And
Wagner. Couldn't do as good of a player he was. Carlos Delgado couldn't do Carlos Delgado.
mm,
Um, it was something about like him and Reyes and Wright, and I could even who else? Tom Glavine didn't like Tom Glavine because he went from the Braves and to the Mets, so you couldn't like Tom Glavine. Um, oh man, I could keep going, but I'm gonna stop there.
I mean, like it might have been. Was it like all like the handshakes and stuff? Because I could tell how that could get under people's skin. Like whenever like I don't know, because Jose Reyes I think was the orchestrator of all that. Like whenever somebody like hit a home
Yeah,
run or scored a run or
I
whatever,
remember that.
they were just like jogging back to the dugout, and he had a handshake for everybody. And like for Mets fans, that was awesome. But I could see how that could get under the
Oh,
skin
we
of
hated it.
pretty much everybody else.
We hated it. And another one who was clutch, extremely clutch in the playoffs. He was a great player. Probably could be a Hall of Famer. Carlos Beltran. Like Carlos Beltran was I couldn't stay. It was his personality or something of how good he was. It was like, I don't like this guy. Just don't like him. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Uh, but hey, man, this was really fun today. I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for helping me wrap up the NL East. Just tell them kind of like where they can follow you, where your work's at, all that good stuff. Yeah, tell the crowd.
Yeah, so you can find all my Mets related content on metsmerizedonline.com. And if you want to find me on Twitter, I'm mmusico8 and talking about all baseball, most of the Mets, just because that takes up the most of my time. But like we said at the beginning, appreciate all the baseball and just kind of marvel at just how good these guys are. So it's kind of, the hate has kind of, gone away over the years as of, in my old age. I'm almost 34 now. So I'm like essentially ancient to a lot of people. Um, but yeah, just being able to just appreciate baseball. That's usually how I spend my time on Twitter, just looking at baseball stuff. So come over and say hey.
Yeah. All right, Matt, thanks so much, man. And yeah, as always, man, thank you so much.